Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a nation standing at a really critical crossroads, Indonesia. With more than 17,000 islands and the third largest rainforest in the world, its place in the global climate story is incredibly unique. It's complex, and it presents us with a truly urgent choice. So let's start with a picture you probably know well. Just imagine it for a second. That feeling of salt in the air, the sound of the waves, it's that classic Indonesian coastline we all know and love. But what if I told you that this very landscape is on the front line of a massive, dramatic change? Now imagine a different future for that exact same beach, one where the beautiful coconut trees have their roots exposed by a rising sea, where the once vibrant coral is now just a silent, ghostly white, and where the local fishing nets keep coming back empty. And listen, this isn't some sci-fi movie plot. This is what's really at stake. It's exactly why we need to understand what's going on. All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll get the basic science straight. Then we'll dive into the specific threats that Indonesia is up against. After that, we'll explore this tricky position the nation is in. And we'll wrap up with the most important part, our power to make a change. Okay, let's jump right in. Part 1, our islands, our climate. We're going to quickly break down the science behind this new reality we're all facing. So first things first, let's get clear on weather versus climate. Think of it like this. Weather is like your mood. It changes all the time, right? Sunny one minute, rainy the next. But climate, that's like your personality. It's the long-term, predictable pattern. For generations, Indonesia has had a reliable tropical personality. But now, that personality is becoming dangerously unpredictable. And the reason for this big change? It's all about a disruption to something called the greenhouse effect. Now, the funny thing is, the greenhouse effect isn't naturally a bad thing. In fact, it's absolutely essential. It's basically this natural blanket around the Earth that traps just the right amount of the sun's heat to make life possible. A really simple way to get your head around this is to think about a car parked in the sun. Sunlight streams through the windows and heats up the inside, but the windows then trap a lot of that heat, right? It can't easily escape. Well, by burning fossil fuels and other activities, we've been making the Earth's windows, our atmosphere, thicker and thicker. We're trapping way more heat than we're supposed to. Okay, so that's the big picture. But how does this all play out specifically for Indonesia? Because while climate change is happening everywhere, the way it shows up here in this massive archipelago is, well, it's just different. You could say we're really fighting a crisis on 3 fronts. First, there's deforestation, clearing our incredible rainforest, often for products used all over the world. Second, we have the huge problem of our peatland fires. And third, with thousands and thousands of islands, our coastal areas are extremely vulnerable. Let's start with something many of us in the region know all too well, the kabut asap, the smoke haze. Yeah, that scratchy throat, the stinging eyes, that unsettling yellow sky. It's become a recurring and dangerous part of life. And a lot of that smoke comes from a pretty surprising source, our peatlands. Now, these are so much more than just swamps. Imagine them as giant natural sponges that have spent thousands of years soaking up and storing massive amounts of carbon. In fact, the world's peatlands store more carbon than all of its forests combined. So when these carbon-packed peatlands get drained and burned, usually for agriculture, the amount of pollution released is just staggering. To put it in perspective, during the huge fires back in 2015, on some days, the daily emissions just from Indonesia's fires were greater than the daily emissions of the entire U.S. economy. Just let that sink in. Meanwhile, on our coasts, a devastating double whammy is happening. On one side, you have the world's oceans rising from global warming. On the other, in cities like Jakarta, the ground itself is actually sinking, mostly because too much groundwater is being pumped out. You see the problem? A rising sea is literally coming up to meet a sinking city. And this brings us to the very heart of the issue for Indonesia. It's this central paradox. The country is, without a doubt, a major victim of climate change, but at the same time, it's also a significant contributor. And being in that tough spot, well, it also presents a unique opportunity to lead. So here is that dilemma, laid bare. As a victim, we're dealing with sinking cities and our crops failing because of extreme weather. But as a contributor, our emissions are driven by deforestation, those peat fires, and a heavy reliance on coal to power everything. And this isn't some abstract problem with numbers on a chart. It hits real people hard. Take a fisherman like Pak Booty. The oceans get warmer, the coral reefs die, and suddenly he has to go further and further out to sea, burning more fuel he can't afford just to catch way fewer fish. That's a direct hit on his livelihood and on our nation's food security. Okay, we've laid out some pretty big problems, but let's shift gears because this next part is the most important one. It's about our power to change things. Let's focus on the incredible solutions that are absolutely within our reach. Here's what's so exciting. Indonesia is just unbelievably blessed with renewable energy potential. I mean, sitting on the ring of fire means we have an estimated 40% of the entire planet's geothermal reserves. That is a gigantic, clean power source sitting right underneath our feet. And that's not even mentioning the incredible year-round potential for solar power. And let's be really clear about this. Shifting to renewable energy is not about making a sacrifice. It is a straight-up upgrade. This is our chance to leapfrog old, dirty technology and build a more modern, more prosperous economy that creates hundreds of thousands of new, skilled jobs for our people. And you want to know the best part? This isn't just some theory. Change is already happening all over the country from the ground up. It's happening with amazing youth movements like Bye Bye Plastic Bags in Bali. It's happening with indigenous communities who are securing the legal rights to protect their own ancestral forests. It's happening with farmers who are adapting with brilliant climate-smart techniques. So that leaves the big question, what can I do? Well, the path really starts with small, everyday choices. Things like reducing our waste, especially those single-use plastics, saving energy where we can at home, thinking about where our food comes from and supporting local. And so importantly, using our voice to support the businesses and the policies that are trying to be part of the solution. Because ultimately, the future we all want for Indonesia isn't going to be built by one single grand plan. It's going to be built by the collective power of millions of us, making millions of better choices. The future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create together. So the only real question left is, how will you begin?